Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to our Wednesday webinars. Today we are looking at the RAID approach, and we have, as always, our speaker, Dr. William Davies, Head of Applied Clinical Psychology at the APT, and myself, Amy George, who's the Deputy Director at APT. And everyone's found the chat box, or a lot of people you have, which is lovely to see so many people from all over the world. So welcome back to those who've been before, and welcome to everybody who's here for the first time. And our speaker is Dr. William Davies. He is a consultant psychologist and head of applied clinical psychology here at the APT. Post-qualification courses written by him have been studied by over 125 mental health professionals, meaning that his input has influenced interventions with literally millions of people. So that's it from me. All over to you, Will.
Lovely. Thanks, Amy, very much. And thanks for being here, everybody. It's fantastic to see so many people turn out for what is a fairly specialized approach, really, because it's working with people with challenging behavior. And it is quite extreme challenging behavior. And this is I'm happy to say this is a very well utilized approach. I think around about 25,000 professionals have trained in the RAID approach. So it's widely used in the UK, especially with very difficult, challenging behaviour in secure facilities and so on. So welcome everybody, delighted to see you all here, that's fantastic. Now, just to have a look what the RAID approach is, it is a relentlessly positive approach to working with extreme behaviour, and especially the most extreme behaviour. But it's used right across the board. So it's used with insecure facilities for adults and youngsters, with mentally ill, with schizophrenia and so on, and not mentally ill, in residential facilities and non-residential settings. In fact, it was originally written for adolescents and in secure facilities for adolescents, but it's rapidly caught fire and it's right across the board now. So a little exercise to start us going, perhaps. What do you regard as extreme behavior? In other words, what do you find challenging or difficult? Don't worry about what other people think, but because this is the thing about extreme behavior, it varies a terrific lot. So just whatever you think, jot it down in chat if you would, and we'll come back to it in a minute. I'll try
just to give you a boost before you carry on, Patrick says it's the best training he's been on. Great with EUPD.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick.
EUPD, virtually the same as borderline personality disorder, just a different classification system. Lovely. So while you're thinking about that, what is extreme behavior? Let's have a look at the two of the philosophies that people use for working with extreme behavior. One of which is punishment, and the other of which is extinction. So let's just have a look at punishment for the moment. Now, punishment, although it's a harsh word, it is actually a more liberal thing than it sounds. You simply spot the things that the person does that are wrong or illegal or whatever it is, and ask yourself, what can I do so they don't do that again? So it's basically discouraging people from doing the same thing again. But there are some fatal flaws with that. You might want to be thinking about that as well. And extinction is where you work out what the person gets out of their behavior and resolve that they won't get it anymore. For example, not giving attention for attention-seeking behavior. By the way, there isn't half so much attention-seeking behavior around as we like to think there is, but some behavior is indeed attention-seeking, and why not? We all like attention. But the idea is not to give them attention for that if you're into extinction. Now, both of these approaches, punishment and extinction, have both got problems with them. So have a go, if you would, please, in chat. Gosh, we're off to a hard work start for you, I'm sorry. What's wrong with punishment in terms of anything? The thing is, you see, punishment works fine. We're all used to sort of punishment systems. If we drive too fast on the road, we're liable to get a fine or whatever it would be. So we're all used to that kind of thing, and it works pretty well. It controls what we do quite well. So what's wrong in using it with people who show distinctly challenging behavior? Why does it not work so well with with them, I wonder? Jot it down in chat if you would.
We've got all sorts of answers coming through in chat. Are you okay?
Yeah.
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 Punishment may segregate. It's a negative reaction to negative behaviour.
Yep.
Address the cause. There's lots. Limited chances for learning. Negative.
Yes.
Help in the long run.
Good. Okay, well, let's see if we can get the same then for extinction. Now, extinction isn't quite so punitive as punishment, is it? It assumes that if you ignore or walk away from the problem behavior, then the person will stop doing it because they're no longer getting the payoff. So what problems can you think of with using extinction as a policy for responding to challenging behavior? There are major flaws with it. What are they, I wonder? Just while you're thinking about that, let's come back to what is extreme behavior. The kind of things that people have put up in the past are violence, self-mutilation, that's a very common one, disruptive behavior in groups, smearing, self-defeating behavior where they undermine themselves, their own progress, excessive complaining and legal actions, absconding, sexually inappropriate behavior, being unmotivated, no respect for others' opinions, etc., splitting and manipulation, all sorts of things. Whole plethora. Amy's already set us going with the punishment. Let's have a look how this matches up with what you got. Number one, of course, is it breeds resentment, revenge, and reactance. Reactance is where the person deliberately reacts against the direction you're trying to push them in. Number two, it actually highlights the problem behavior. In other words, if it's a residential facility, for example, bad behavior is where the action is, because that's when things happen, when you do bad stuff. It can lead to unethical staff behavior, because once you start thinking in terms of punishment, and the first punishment hasn't worked, well, what can we do worse than that? Then it leads down a bad path. It'll be copied by clients as setting a bad model. And it breeds fear, lack of motivation, deceit when you don't, you're not open. It does nothing to promote good behavior. Now, that's a very important one, I think, and one of your respondents had that, Amy, didn't they? Yeah.
No, there were some gorgeous responses. I'm sorry I didn't get to them all.
Okay, did you get anything for extinction?
We did, lots and lots. Ignoring some challenging behaviours isn't safe. Doesn't provide an alternative behaviour to replace unwanted behaviour.
Very good.
It can create an escalation of behaviour.
Yep.
We might miss what is actually the real issue and isolate someone further.
Yeah. Very good. Blimey. I think they've been on the RAID course.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. Number one, the client will often up the ante. If you're in facilities for very difficult people, this almost invariably happens. The person will up the ante. I remember hearing about one place where they were ignoring a person who was self-harming. And they were very much into extinction, so they're taking no notice when the person was self-harm. And they upped the ante to the extent that it was in the days when people would smoke, and this person burned her eyes with a lighted cigarette. People up the ante to the degree you have to take notice. So that's one of the problems. It's dangerous to ignore certain behaviors, or are dangerous and unethical. Consistency is absolutely impossible, and if you're not consistent, then it simply doesn't work. You might say, well, no, our team's going to be totally consistent, but there is a problem with that, and that is the person gets their attention or whatever it is they want from other patients in a residential facility, so you cannot be totally consistent. It doesn't matter whether the staff team is consistent, it has to be totally consistent. It seems uncaring, so again, it's a poor model. It seems to be condoning the behavior, and it does nothing to promote good behavior, like the other one, like punishment. But the most strange thing with both of these philosophies, it seems to me, is that they both rely on a behavior happening before you can do anything. The red behavior, as we call it, the bad behavior, the red behavior, has to happen before you can punish it. And likewise, it has to happen before you can ignore it. So what use is a philosophy for working with extreme behavior that actually relies on the extreme behavior happening? It just makes no sense. It's a paradox. So let's have a look. I don't like really sort of knocking other approaches, but it does make sense to have a look at that, because those two are so common in the UK, certainly, that it's worth looking at. So the RAID approach says that instead of focusing on the challenging behavior, it's best to focus on developing the appropriate behavior, and that will overwhelm the challenging behavior. That is as simple as that. Stands for reinforce appropriate, implode disruptive. Reinforce appropriate behavior, so build and develop that. Implode disruptive behavior, let that just collapse and disappear and drift away. Okay. So we can sort of summarize it quite easily. Someone says, well, how would you summarize the RAID approach? We say, well, what we do is we play down disruptive behavior as far as safety allows and concentrate instead on nurturing and developing appropriate behavior. So it gradually displaces the disruptive behavior. Very, very simple, very clear, very easy to describe what you do. So, and most people, most teams love to have an approach that they can kind of openly describe, and they're all singing from the same song sheet, as it were. They're all doing the same thing, and it's an approach that kind of makes sense, if you know what I mean, when you say it out loud. Now, this is the picture I drew of it, and this is kind of, I think this is the one thing when we kind of examine what people remember. This is the one thing that everybody remembers. So what you've got is, you've got this kind of syringe type object, this green and red, which that represents the person we're working with. And in it, you've got green behavior, appropriate behavior is green, and difficult and disruptive behavior is red. By the way, when we talk about disruptive behavior, often enough, we're talking about behavior that is disruptive for the person concerned. It disrupts their progress, disrupts their well-being, as well as possibly people around them as well. So that's the person. And traditionally, everyone has gone for the red behavior. So what are we going to do about this red behavior? But the difference with the RAID approach is we go the other end and we say, what about concentrating on the green and putting all our therapeutic effort into this filter funnel here, in a sense, putting more green fluid in, allowing it to flow along the rubber tubing or the relationship between us into the person and simply push out the difficult and disruptive behavior there. So that is, I think, still to this day, I think that is probably the best way of conceptualizing the RAID approach. I say to this day, I wrote the RAID approach 30 years ago, and it is interesting, it is still APT's top selling course. It is nice to see. So RAID intervention, let's have a look at an example. Alan is in the habit of winding up Ben until Ben finally assaults him. So a traditional intervention might involve telling off Alan for winding Ben up and telling off Ben for assaulting Alan. And possibly there might be other further sanctions involved as well, who knows. A raiding intervention would be to involve teaching Alan to treat Ben with respect or to make friends with him, or at least to leave him alone, and B, teaching Ben how to cope with someone who is winding him up. And that's quite a different approach, isn't it? And it's interesting, when we set our minds to, if we set ourselves a problem, how can we get Alan and Ben to be good friends with each other? People come out with all sorts of good ideas for that kind of question. So it's a very good question to ask. We call them green questions. We'll come on to it with a bit of luck later on. Yeah, I should tell you, the RAID course is a 3-day course. So what I'm trying to do is tell you as much about it as I possibly can in the 45 minutes or so that we have. So I just go through as quickly as I can the main ideas, and I'm hoping you're kind of taking the ones you want and leaving the others. So let's have a look at green behavior. If our business is to nurture green behavior and allow it to displace the red, let's have a look at it. So there are three types of green behavior. One is extraordinarily green behavior, behavior which is green and out of the ordinary for the individual concerned, even though it might be ordinary for most people. Number two is one of the more interesting ones, green, but not quite the shade of green I had in mind, which is doing good things, but not necessarily the good things we had in mind. And progress, which is always green. That is often camouflaged, though, because, for example, if you're used to working with somebody who, when they are agitated, they will normally attack somebody, and they progress onto wrecking their room instead of attacking people when they're agitated, well, that is progress. So that is good. So you want to reinforce that. But on the other hand, everything in us says, well, why would you want to reinforce somebody for smashing up their room? It doesn't feel right. But it is right because it's progress, and progress is always green. Funny enough, my wife was talking this morning, she was saying that my wife's very keen that our granddaughter should do well at school and have a good education and so on. So she was saying that our granddaughter had asked if we could do Duolingo for Spanish, and my wife's reaction was, no, you got to work on your French. And she said she held back from saying that, but because of course, the wife is favouring French is important to work on, but granddaughter is favouring Spanish just now as the one to work on. But both, of course, they're both good green behaviours, aren't they? But not quite the one I had in mind. And that is such a common thing. Time and again, that happens. So the principle of reinforcing green behavior, having spotted it in that way, the principle of reinforcing green behavior is simple. We try and respond in a way which makes the green behavior more likely to happen again. And in practice, this isn't always very easy. For instance, it says, well, I can't really ask you for instance, so I better give you one. Have you got anything you want to say, Ames, on the chat behavior, or am I okay?
No, I think everyone's gripped here.
Everyone okay? I mean,
yeah.
Crack on.
Okay, but actually, can I just ask, does this approach work with lack of behaviour, if that's the problem?
Absolutely, yes. Very much so.
Yep.
It's because even with lack of behaviour, the person will do something. And very often when you've got, for example, if you've got someone who just likes to lie on their bed or sit in a chair, lying on a bed or sitting in a chair is very often a very, very good reinforcer for them. So whenever they do anything, you've got a ready-made reinforcer. You say, okay, go and have a sit down or go and have a lie down. And that is, time and again, that is the best reinforcer. I may have told you about a patient of mine who I used to work a lot with suicidal people, and I used to give them, for about 10 years, I worked in that area, and I used to give them my phone number. And for 10 years, nobody, just one person abused it. Only one person phoned me up when they didn't really need to. And it's constant of pestering in a way. And the way I got around that, you probably can guess, is whenever there was 2 or 3 or 4 days when they didn't phone me up, what did I do? I phoned them up. I knew what the reinforcer was. It was the phone call between the two of us. So it seems paradoxical in a sense. You do the very thing you don't want to happen, but we know what the reinforcer is. Same thing with someone who is doing very little.
Super.
Yeah. Try this one. This is a daughter of mine a while back. She was about 11 at the time. And she, like all children, had been into dancing, and music on in the house, and she'd be dancing around the place. That's what kids do. That's what she did. Anyway, went to senior school, went to a junior disco, and after that, no more dancing. Didn't matter what music you had on in the house. she wouldn't dance to it. She was just no dancing. So obviously she had some feedback about her dance style, but we didn't sort of say anything. But 6 months later, Saturday morning, I was sitting reading the paper. The music was playing. I forget what was playing, some music. And there she was, back as she would have been 6 months ago, dancing around to the music in the same room as I was reading the paper. And I thought to myself, well, what I need to do is reinforce this behavior. So the question is, what should I do? You might want to write an answer in there. We'll come back to it in a minute.
Just while people are writing, is this a sort of behavioural approach?
It is sometimes viewed as a behavioural approach. Yes, it is, for sure. And the other sort of informing literature, if you like, is a constructional approach, where you build stuff rather than taking stuff away. Constructional approach. So you're building people's, behavior, personality, etc. You're nurturing them rather than trying to remove their inappropriate behavior.
Got a lot of nice answers here coming in about the dancing.
Yeah.
50-50 as to whether you should get up and dance with her, praise the dancing, or carry on reading your newspaper.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, I think the first answer can have a point or two, because some parents, if they got up and danced with their children, that would be really reinforcing. You have to make your own judgment as to whether that would be for me. And my guess was, no, it wouldn't be. What was the second one? The second one was?
Carry on reading your newspaper.
I think that was the third one. There was another one.
Oh, sorry. Oh, praise the dancing.
Praise the dancing. I didn't think that praising the dancing would be a good one. For a start, I didn't think that my judgment about the quality of dancing would be credible. And I thought I might have a kind of self-conscious kind of thing, If my dad thinks my dancing is great, that just proves how useless it is, And I thought the answer really was carry on reading the newspaper. The behavior that had prompted the dancing in the first place was music playing, me reading the paper, engrossed. So do the same thing again. Carry on reading the newspaper next Saturday, next Tuesday, any day you like. Set up that again, and that will probably prompt the same behavior.
Well, Craig's come up with a nice alternative to, carry on reading the newspaper, but also turn the music up.
Oh, right, that's nice. Yeah, it's quite right, isn't it? The real reinforcer is not anything that I would do, but it's the music, isn't it? It's the feeling of dancing to music. That's the real reinforcer. And maybe turn the music up, maybe play similar music from then on, Now, we're moving on to a completely different thing now. I'm just covering as many good ideas from the course as I can think of, as I've got written down. Negative reinforcement, really, really important. Mostly people think in terms of positive reinforcement, but negative reinforcement with many people who have a lot of difficulties is actually more important, more effective than positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is still reinforcement, but it is reinforcing the person by removing something they don't want. So, for example, a child tidying their bedroom can be reinforced by the parents stopping nagging them to do it. And that is routine. That happens day in, day out in all sorts of places. The behavior of a patient in a halfway house who has had an especially good week might be reinforced by allowing them to skip some chore or other, just for that day, And for many people, negative reinforcement is much more powerful than positive reinforcement. Just at the moment, it's very busy at work at the moment. So when I get home and so on, they don't necessarily want to start making a meal, etc., etc. So we're having a lot of takeaways at the moment. And the reinforcement there is the removal of the chore of preparing it and the chore of washing it up. Just to be able to eat stuff out of its container is really, really nice. It's the food probably isn't as good as what we would do if we made our own food, but then there's the negative reinforcement that is so rewarding. And for lots of people, that's a very strong thing.
Laura's asking, how would this help a child who doesn't tidy their room?
Yes, you can't necessarily reinforce someone unless they do something worthy of reinforcement. So what you're on the lookout for is anything that you can reinforce. But we'll come on to something equally important, or possibly even more important, Laura, in a minute, and that is non-contingent reinforcement, where the person has not done the required behaviour, but they get reinforcement even so. And the question arises, is that a good idea? And the answer is yes, it is actually. It turns out, the research tells us that it is a good idea. So they don't necessarily have to earn the reinforcement. Here's another concept, the template for success. A template is something you can copy repeatedly. So a template for success is obtained by noticing an instance of success and analysing what led to that. After that, all you need to do is repeat what led to the success in the first place. So you can say, Ben, how did you manage to control yourself when Alan was winding you up? If you can spot a single instance of Ben managing to control himself when Alan was winding him up, then you can say, how did you manage to do that? And just by reliving what he did, then that makes it more likely to happen again, because it's like treading a path through a jungle, rerunning a circuit, a neuronal circuit. And it happens more likely to happen again the more often you rerun it. In the APT, when we have a particularly good week or when things are going particularly well, what do you think we do? We have an emergency meeting. Question is, why are things going so well? Identify why things are going so well. And that is really important. It's a template for success there.
Just on the bedroom cleaning, John had one mother who left her son a message saying, "Dear Sam, this is your room, please clean me." But then Sam left a message saying, "Dear room, you sound like my mum."
Very good, very good. You'll go far. Okay, completely separate topic now. Green questions. Green questions focus on green behavior, the appropriate behavior, not the red behavior, the inappropriate. And so long as we can answer them, the answer will necessarily eliminate the problem behavior. So let's have a look. Let me give you an example of that. I was running the RAID course a while back, and it was going terribly well. It was in London, and it was an open course. There was people all over the country come to it, and it was going incredibly well. And I was so proud of myself. And you can guess what's going to happen. Coffee time on day 2. I had three guys. They came up to me at coffee time and said, "This course is fantastic, really enjoying it." And I said, "Yeah," I was feeling very smug. "Yeah, fantastic." And they said, "But," and I said, "What?" They said, "But it's no use to us if you can't tell us one simple thing." And they said, we got a 10-year-old. We work in a children's home, and we got a 10-year-old, and he comes out in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, he's wide awake, runs around the place, wrecking the place, pulling curtains down, assaulting any staff who try and stop him. He's just a terror. Staff are going off sick. They're so demoralized. He's been doing this for a year. He's been with us for a year. He's got worse rather than better. And it's just hopeless. And if you can't tell us what to do at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when he comes out of his room and does all this, then really, good cause as it might be, it's no use to us. And that deflated me so much and put me off my coffee. And I thought, well, because they were so, vehement about it. I thought, yes, but they're actually asking the wrong question. In RAID terms, they're asking the wrong question. They're focusing on the red behavior, not the green, aren't they? And they vividly describe this red behavior and how terrible it is, how it's demoralizing everybody, how awful it is. So what would a green question be? A question that focuses on green behavior. A green question would be, I wonder if anyone's written it down. There's not much time to do it, is there? Green
No,
question.
you've been too speedy.
Okay. Well, I expect someone's typing it even now as we speak. The green question would be not what do we do at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock? Green question would be, how do we get, John will call him, how do we get John to sleep through the night? That's green behavior. We are not owls. We're designed to sleep through the night. So that's appropriate behavior. And if you can answer that question, it necessarily answers the red question. So when we got back into session after coffee, we all of us as a group got all sorts of good answers to how do we get John to sleep through the night? All sorts of good answers, lots of them, but they're all basically very simple answers. Yeah, make sure he has an active day. Make sure he doesn't have Coca-Cola or anything like that. Make sure he hasn't got any worries on his mind. Is he sharing a room with somebody who's bullying him? Perhaps make sure he's comfortable in his room and okay. Maybe he's lonely in his room. Make sure he's okay in his room and so on. All very straightforward things. And one of the three guys said, we've done all that. But he was undone because simultaneously, another of the three guys said, we haven't got time to do all that. So it was interesting. And so we knew, because we'd asked them actually what they had done before we started, we knew they hadn't done all that. And the question, so why hadn't they done? Because these are very simple things. The reason was simple. They hadn't asked that question. They'd never asked themselves, how do we get John to sleep through the night? They had asked, what do we do when he gets up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and starts smashing the place? So that is, that's the point of a green question. And it's the answer to a lot of problems. So talk green, not red. Just tell me what time it is. Skip constructive. Well, constructive criticism. Go on and let's have a look at this. The brain likes images and has almost no image for the word don't, because it's not word. So we have to keep our criticisms constructive and our advice positive. And if we ask ourselves, in what way is constructive criticism different from other forms of criticism? It's simply this. Standard criticism focuses on what the person did wrong, the red behavior, and constructive criticism focuses on what would work better for them, the green behavior. So if we're going to have constructive criticism, we always have to say what would work better for the person. It's more work. It's easy to kind of blurt out what the person has done wrong. It's rather more difficult to say what would work better. You actually have to think and work it out. Okay, I'm feeling as though I'm skipping through a lot of ideas, Ames. Anything that anybody wants to contribute or ask or anything?
No, we're doing nicely here.
You okay?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Now this separate idea, and it's the RAID ladder of achievement. And it relates to a couple of slides ago, here. You've got the rational brain, which is in blue, and you've got the primitive brain, which in evolutionary terms came well before the rational brain. So in that sense, it's primitive, in red. So the limbic system, the red system, is the thing that gives us urges and just makes us want to do things and so on. The rational brain is when we start thinking things through, we start thinking with the head rather than the heart. That's the cerebrum or cerebral cortex. So the question arises, how can you marry these two up in some nice way? And this ladder is one of the best ways I've come across of doing it. Because what you do is you put at the top of the ladder what the person really wants, where they really want. So sometimes a person will say something quite straightforward. Say, well, I'd really love to have a flat of my own and maybe someone to share it with and just to lead an ordinary life. So you put all that, either pictures or words, at the top of the ladder. That's what you put. That's what they really want. That's their primitive brain. It's saying what would motivate them. And then on the rungs of the ladder, you put the steps, the logical steps that would get them to that position. So whatever number of steps it is, you can draw out your own tailor-made ladder. And it's a really, really good way. You've got the motivator right at the top, the logical steps up the rungs. So in one simple mechanism, you've melded the cerebral cortex with the limbic system, and you've got one powering up the other and the other responding to the first. So wonderful, wonderful piece of kit. Okay. Next one. Funny, actually, when I first ran this course, it's commissioned by Lincolnshire Social Services, funnily enough, for their people who worked with adolescents. And so I looked at all the research and worked out a really good course, ran it over 3 days. And even the very first time it ran, it went very well. And at the tea time, same thing, or rather the same thing happened as before. I was feeling very pleased with myself. And somebody was talking to me and said, great course, fantastic course. And I said, yeah. He said, but I won't remember any of it. And again, that sort of deflated me. And I said, why not? And he said, well, what you've done is you've listed 13 really, really good ideas. I like every one of them, fantastic ideas. But there's no sort of joining theme to them. And of course, he was right. And I went home that evening. I thought, well, what is the joining theme? And of course, it is all to do with developing people, nurturing people, reinforcing appropriate stuff, and playing down as far as you possibly can the difficult and disruptive stuff. And that's where the RAID acronym was born: reinforce appropriate, employ difficult and disruptive. And that was that labeled the joining theme, if you like. So here is another one of the ideas that fits under that title, if you like, and it's non-contingent reinforcement. Really important idea. By and large, people respond best when reinforcement is contingent on their behavior. In other words, they earn what they get and get what they earn. That's by and large what works well. But people also need non-contingent reinforcement. In other words, reinforcement that just happens. They haven't earned it, it just happens. And I would suggest to you, if you want any sort of a homework task to practice your raiding tonight, do this. Give some kind of a reinforcer to yourself or anybody else who hasn't earned it. And so it's really important that a person has done nothing to earn it. It's just completely out of the blue. It's just doing something nice, saying something nice, having a treat, whatever, for no good reason. And it turns out that non-contingent reinforcement like that is really, really important and really effective if you're working with challenging behavior. If you look up that in the Google Scholar, non-contingent reinforcement and challenging behavior, it's amazing how effective it is. Doesn't seem right, does it? Right, just having a look how we're doing for time. Should really be coming to a close, I think. Let's move on to functional analysis. Okay. Just on, I feel you're about to say something, Amy. Did I hear your microphone slip on, or was that just my oversensitive, whatever?
Could you give us an example of non-contingent reinforcement?
Yeah. Supposing you go home this evening, and supposing you got a couple of children, and supposing you know that they like McDonald's, but there are other takeaway places, but supposing you know they like McDonald's, and supposing they've done nothing that would possibly warrant them having a McDonald's takeaway this evening, then this evening would be a really good idea to get them a McDonald's. Now, everything in us says, no, they haven't earned it. They've done nothing. You've just said they don't deserve it. But that's the whole point about non-contingent reinforcement. It's something that happens out of the blue for no good reason. And it's the other side of the coin from stuff you earn. And both sides are important. Does that make sense?
I hope that's okay. Was it Shane that asked that one? So yeah, sounds good to me.
It's a really good thing to make yourself do, because it is against the grain, and it's a really good thing to try out. If you want to take it a step further, do it on yourself. When you know you've done nothing to deserve it, you've been a bit idle, you haven't really done what you wanted to do, and there you are in the evening time, still feeling a bit idle. Get yourself a treat, and that is non-contingent reinforcement. You say, well, that's never right. Well, it is, along with the other side of the coin as well.
Would this be the same as self-love?
Well, indeed, yeah.
Sounds nice.
Self-love and compassion-focused therapy and so on. Yeah, it would all come under that, yeah.
Super.
Okay. Functional analysis is really important, and it's really good, but I don't want to go into it because it would take too long. But I just want to have perhaps just say a quote from Henry Thoreau, who was in the 19th century in America. Great to see somebody from Indiana here, by the way. It must be really early in Indiana. And here he is the author of Walden. And he said words to the effect that often enough, the disruptive behavior is the person's solution to a problem they've got. Our real problem is to help them find a better solution. And that's what underlies functional analysis. What are they getting at? Why are they doing the challenging behavior they're doing? Well, surely there must be a better way that they can get that very same payoff. So, for example, a lot of people who self-harm, it's a way of reducing distress. And it works very well, strangely enough, but there are better ways, surely, aren't there, of reducing distress? And that's what we do. Okay.
Do you know why non-contingent reinforcement works?
Frankly, no. I have my own notions about it, but there isn't really an answer as to why it works. The one idea, though, is that you simply get reinforced for continuing to exist, for acting, behaving, doing things. You get reinforced for it. So that encourages you to continue to exist, be a bit more active. Somebody asked earlier on, what happens if people don't do anything kind of appropriate? They don't tidy their room and so on. Well, the idea of non-contingent reinforcement is it kind of encourages people that you can still be reinforced and makes you more active. And away you go.
Anna's come up with a good example, was that if somebody only said, I love you, when the partner said it first, you'd think there was a problem.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Yes. Lovely, yes. Or indeed, yes, if you only say I love you when the person has done something really good and lovable, that wouldn't be so great either. Yeah. Good one. Behaviour support, practice-based evidence. Very important to look at ourselves. By definition, challenging behavior working with challenging behavior is challenging, by definition. So if we're in this area, it's very important to look after ourselves. That way, everybody benefits, not just us, but everybody else. Okay, I want to wind down aims, and this one is just to let people know, really, that if you are already doing good things with behavior that's difficult to manage, then you can apply for a RAID award. You don't have to be applying the RAID approach necessarily. You're probably doing something very positive, and you can apply for the RAID award and have it recognized and published on the web. If you're interested in applying for that, it's APT Psychology Training Awards. It's absolutely free to enter. There's no catch. And you go to the website, if you like, and put awards in the search box there.
Brilliant. The non-contingent reinforcement's got a lot of questions.
Oh, that's fantastically good.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
So let me see where to start. Would it be the same as non-contingent reinforce? Where have I gone? Non-conditional positive regard.
Yes, yes, very, very much so, except that unconditional positive regard is, that's right, is a positive regard that is totally unconditional. But with non-contingent reinforcement, you do actually reinforce the person. In other words, get them a McDonald's, say something nice, like I love you or whatever it would be. There is something that arrives. It is a reinforcer. A reinforcer for what? Nothing really, just for being there.
Deborah has cheekily asked if she can get an award for not doing anything.
I think you've named it, Ames. I think.
Was non-contingent once seen as engineering change, doing something different rather than continuing with the same old catalyst for change?
Yes, well, it would certainly be that, wouldn't it? When I can think of a special hospital where a person had been lost every privilege you can imagine. So it ended up with absolutely nothing. And three nurses actually got together, three psychiatric nurses got together and said, come on, we're going to do something about this. And they did something completely different, entirely based on non-contingent reinforcement. They said, come on, even though they've not earned it, they're behaving really badly and so on, let's get them out and help them to start living a proper life again. And completely like that.
What examples of non-contingent things can you do in a CAMHS inpatient ward where it's unsettled and some of the young people are not engaging?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The young people there, what you've said basically is that they're not earning anything. They're not. They're unsettled. They're not engaging. They're not earning any reward, and that's exactly when non-contingent reinforcement is so important. If you in a situation like that, I'm afraid, if you wait for people to earn their reward, you're going to wait all your life. So you have to have something that breaks it up to get the non-contingent reward in first. And sometimes the person responds badly, but you keep cracking on at it, you keep at it, and it is a good thing to do, along with other things, all the other things we've been talking about.
And how would this apply to acute psychosis?
Same thing, exactly the same thing. I worked for 5 years on a locked ward, mainly for people with extreme psychotic conditions at St Andrews, and very difficult and violent behaviour and so on. And that's pretty much exactly what we did there. And the independent facilities like that, they're one of the big users of the RAID approach.
But would this actually be rewarding the non-desirable behaviour accidentally?
It might be, but we don't have to worry about that. Sometimes you do accidentally reinforce an undesirable behaviour. But if our main focus is on nurturing appropriate behaviour, green behaviour, then by and large, that's what we end up doing. And the whole thing about intermittent reinforcement is to do it sort of a little bit haphazard, not perfectly, actually works best. You got some good questions there, Ames.
They're pouring in, aren't they? Is it a way of positive role modelling, showing how to behave and treat others?
Yes, that is an element of it. That's why we'd be against punishment, for example. That's why we'd be against, leaving people to it when they're behaving really difficultly, hurting themselves and so on. Extinction would be against extinction because it's not forming a good model.
Okay, sorry, I'll give you a break for a bit.
Okay, and I'm guessing that there's probably quite a few people who are operating RAID already. So again, just a plug for if you want to see if you want to be a centre of excellence, again, go on the web and have a look at that. See if you'd like to apply to be a centre of excellence. That isn't That isn't non-contingent, I'm afraid. You have to be doing your RAID approach really, really well to be a centre of excellence. You get inspected and all the rest. Okay, last slide. I was just thinking, when I was writing this earlier on, I was thinking, gosh, there's an awful lot of elements I've just pulled out to say. I thought, well, yeah, if you're trying to limit it a little bit, what would be the top 4 things that we've covered? Number 1 would be the diagram, I think, where we're pushing in the green fluid, which displaces the red fluid. That would be the top one, I think. Number 2 would be non-contingent reinforcement. Because it's so easy to do. You can do it sort of unthinkingly, if you like. You're just extra nice, if you like, and regardless of what people do. You'll have some colleagues maybe criticize you and say, well, you can't be that nice. They haven't earned the niceness. Take no notice. Non-contingent reinforcement is very, very powerful. Number 3, have it in mind that we are helping the person to flourish. Help them to be in situations that bring out the best for them, with people that bring out the best for them, and in situations that bring out the best for them. Help them to flourish. And number 4, help them to find a better way to achieve what they achieve by their challenging behaviour. Their challenging behaviour will be for a purpose. We need to work out what that purpose is and help them to find a better way of achieving that. So there's lots, but I would say that if you could get anywhere near those top 4, that'd be a wonderful thing, not only for working in units with extremely difficult people, but the great thing about it is it's entirely positive. So you can apply it to home life. It's like a philosophy. It's right across your life, if you like. Now I've turned evangelical, but let me stop there.
That's great. It's a shame we have to stop after an hour, isn't it? Could talk about this forever.
Yeah, yes.
Have you got the last slide? Last week you gave me a lemon.
Yeah, I say it's a lemon again, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. So we've got a lemon. So for more information, go to apt.ac, and it's completely free of charge. It's part of our response to COVID-19 and its variants. Thank you for attending, and always feel free to invite others. We love seeing everyone here. We're not sure how many free sessions there'll be. It depends on how long COVID lasts, which sadly for these sessions, we seem to be getting a grip on it, which is good, and how much interest there is, but non-sadly, we're getting loads of people, so that's lovely. A certificate of attendance will be emailed to you by the end of the week if you have been here for more than 45 minutes, more than 3/4, so about 45 minutes. Next week, we are going to be examining our thinking style, what works well and badly. So that was a really fab session. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ames, for lovely chairing. Thanks. And thanks everyone for being here. Yes, it's funny how COVID seems to be winding down a bit, doesn't it? It's a marvellous thing. So, and the 17th of April seems to be in the UK is where we're all being unlocked, and we'll roam around the place as much as we like, pretty much.
Brilliant. Let's see you. I hope.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.